Hello everyone, my name is Aaron Spears, young adult librarian right here at the Westlake Porter Public Library. So this spring we're doing another Teen Writers Group session, 2 sessions this particular time, so there'll be 2 YouTube videos. We've done short story writing before, we've done National Novel Writing Month before, so I thought this time it would be good to look at the screenplay format. If you're going to get into creative writing, I think the screenplay format is a great way to help you develop ideas, even if it's not going to be in a screenplay form, but a way to kind of get your idea to have some form and structure to it. We're going to be looking at short screenwriting, so you're not trying to write a whole feature-length screenplay that's a couple hours long or 120 pages. It's how to very economically structure the story that you're telling. So this could be used for like YouTube videos, it could be used for TikTok videos, it could be used for your Twitch stream, any place you want to build a narrative. If you have an idea for a novel, and you're looking forward to National Novel Writing Month in November, it's a way to kind of put your ideas together, get an outline going, and see, does that idea that you have legs? So in this particular video, as we did in our very first in-person session, we're going to be looking at ideas and characters. Where do we go to generate ideas, and how do we keep track of these ideas? Where do we get inspiration from? And then in the second part, we're going to have some writing prompts that dive into how to develop your characters. So where do we start when we're trying to generate ideas? I mean, literally ideas can come from anywhere, which makes it seem like, oh crap, there's like a whole lot there. How do we kind of quantify that? How do we keep track of it? And then also, how do we document those? Actually, in this particular part of brainstorming, you don't want to worry about quality of the ideas. We're talking about quantity here. And so even for our first writing prompt, you're going to want to go for a lot and just try to, keep that inner editor from your brain of going like, oh, that's not really the greatest idea. Don't worry about any of that right now. We're just going for quantity, the amount. We want a lot of ideas, because the more ideas we have to work with, the more interesting what we're going to start putting together is going to end up being. So ideas can come from all kinds of places. You've got personal experience, you've got stuff in the news, people if you have that, I've got one of those uncles that just has a story for everything and has lived a wild life in all kinds of different directions. That's a very interesting character. Talking or texting with that type of person in your life can get you some story ideas. Sometimes there's just like an ad that you'll see like before a YouTube video starts, where like the music just hits you right, or there's an intriguing idea within the ad. That's fine. You never know where inspiration is going to hit. It could be a really cool meme that you saw somewhere. So it doesn't really matter where it's coming from. It's just trying to keep track and document all those as they go, whether you keep like a notebook in your pocket like I do, or your notes app on your phone. Either way, you want to be able to document those little things as they pop up. And since everybody's got like a phone or access to a piece of paper, that's a good way to try to do that. That's what we're going to put together right now, is this like wild cacophony of different ways that ideas are going to come into your brain. So prompt number 1 is the idea prompt, is one of the idea prompts. You're going to want to list out 20 places or things that make you feel either excited or inspired or curious, that really just, that grab your attention. Like, ooh, yeah, that was fun. Ooh, that would be interesting. That's the reaction you're going for. Again, don't worry about if it's a great idea or a bad idea just yet. We're just going for ideas as far as quantity goes. We want 20 of them. You can also just let one word lead to another. When I was doing my example here, I had dreams, which made me think of ghosts for some reason, which then I was thinking of 1960s London because of this ghost movie I just watched. Road trips, heading out on the open road with your friends, mysteries, kayaking, cooking, now I'm going into hobby territory, that sort of thing. So just let your mind wander and come up with 20 different places, things, items, ideas that really interest you. All right, so you've got your list. Got my list here. I got those 20 things, 23 actually, but keep going. That's what brainstorming is. So now we're going to take a look at a grid like this, which you can just draw on your paper. Just draw a tic-tac-toe board and box it in. That's the idea here. So as you can see with the grid, idea number 1, it has 3 different squares or rectangles, in this case, next to it. Grab 3 things at random off your list of 23 things you just brainstormed and plug those into the first 3 spots. Then you're going to do the same thing for idea number 2 and the same thing for idea number 3. And now what we're going to do is take those now combined 3 things, which could be pretty random, throwing things together, and you're going to try to create a story based on what those 3 things. By limiting your story to only those 3 things, try to come up with like a 1 sentence or a story pitch or a story idea that include all 3 of those things. And if you don't really get anywhere, that you're like, this isn't really working for me, that's what idea number 2 is for. And if the same thing happens again, that's what idea number 3 is for. It's really just the idea to structure yourself, give yourself maybe like a 1 or 2 minute timer and just look at what you've got of those 3 ideas. And then also they're all swappable too. You have that list to go back to, try a different combination in there, try adding in a 4th thing, try adding in a 5th thing, and just see where it takes your mind as you're brainstorming here. Now, if you want to get outside of your own experience, there are random plot generators you can use online. So like this one in particular, you go to the site and you just click shuffle, and it gives you these certain elements. It gives you like a person, an object, a play. It gives you these certain things that will randomly generate, and then you have your writing exercise right there. It takes some of the list generating out of it, and it just puts you right into a few shuffled ideas then that could hopefully get a story going for you. And if you don't like the place setting it gives you, or don't like the personality trait it gives you, then don't use that one, or click shuffle again. If you don't have too much time, it's a good way to get some brainstorming going. Or sometimes if you're working on a story and you want like a subplot or something else to add to it, these random plot generators are really handy to go to, and click of a button and you've got your brain off and running and trying to create something new to add into your already existing story. Or maybe it's the great starting point for your story. So whatever method you use to do your brainstorming, at this point, hopefully you've got a couple ideas where you're like, yeah, I think I want to try exploring that a little bit more. I think I'm on the right track here. Well, now it's time to test your idea. Testing your idea is really just a series of tests that allow you to see whether or not you want to actually develop your idea. Sometimes they'll say like, seeing if your idea has legs to it or not. Like, will it support like the short screenplay that you're going to be working on or not? Or is it maybe just a scene? And if we're dealing with a short screenplay or a short story or a short play or whatever, sometimes a scene is all you need, but you're still gonna wanna have to character arcs and things that we're gonna be talking about in our next session. But this one also testing your idea helps you also determine whether or not like that spark really goes off in your brain. You're like, I am interested in this idea. Because this is creative writing. This is not an assignment. This should be something that you feel compelled that you want to tell this story, that you want to work on this story, that you want to develop it and put it on a paper and finish it and then share it. So one of the testing ways is the usual, who's it about, what is it about, when, where, the who, what, when, where, why questions that you always ask. That's one early way that folks learn to like test an idea. But like I said, it's also that does it have legs idea. Is there something here to really explore? Is there something here to really dive into and have characters mull over or experience, or is it something that's going to be compelling to a reader or an audience? Like I said, is it a full story or is it just a scene? And also, what is at stake here? I mean, it could be something as simple as like, I want to go from the couch to the refrigerator to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But you can put all kinds of obstacles and challenges in the way for that person, comical, serious, whatever, that can result in like, that has dramatic tension now because like the power went out and they're house sitting and they don't know the floor plan, or all of a sudden like the dog wakes up and doesn't recognize you and starts attacking. Like there's all kinds of things you could do with that. So think about what's at stake and what are the dramatic stakes for the story. And if you don't have those dramatic stakes for the story, this is the time to invent those. One of the other things you want to look at, so testing number 2 would be, is it original? Is it unique? And if it isn't, which we're going to talk about the 7 basic story plots next, if it's not necessarily feeling that unique or original to you, what kind of surprises or twists could you put on it in order to achieve that uniqueness, that freshness that a reader or a viewer, if it's a short screenplay you're writing that eventually gets to be a YouTube video or a short film or something, what's going to compel the folks to want to watch it? Now, at times too, when you're developing your stories, it could get too personal, which is perfectly fine. But if it's too personal, other people may not connect with it. So what can you do to adapt it to make it more meaningful to other people? Maybe make it a bit broader instead of being as specific. Like if it's a specific detail of your life or something very personal that you went through, maybe look for the commonalities and play up those more than some of the specificity of it. That way it would be a little bit more meaningful to others and they could really get into the story maybe a little bit easier. So as I mentioned, this idea of there's 7 basic stories, which is not like a universalism. It's actually from a book that Christopher Booker wrote called 7 Basic Stories. And I find this to be really handy when I'm past that brainstorming stage and I'm kind of testing out my idea and I'm pretty sure I've got a solid idea. Looking at these 7 basic stories can help you immediately have certain narrative elements or certain narrative beats that will help you in writing out your story, because as you'll see, these could also be called genres to a certain extent, that if you have an idea for a story, maybe one of these 7 basic stories actually is the type of story you're looking at. And if that is the case, there's certain character types, there's certain scenarios, there's certain plot mechanics that kind of fill in for you and help you start expanding your outline and getting more and more of your story going. So let's jump in and look at the first of Christopher Booker's 7 basic stories. So these are not in actually any particular order, I just did the order that he has them in the book. The first one is Overcoming the Monster, where the protagonist sets out to defeat an antagonistic force. This is the bad guy, the bad girl, the bad character. This is usually evil. The force threatens the protagonist and even possibly their homeland. The classic stories here would be, like Jaws, the shark movie. That is overcoming the monster. Any version of Dracula or vampires, that's overcoming a monster. King Kong, you could say that. Avatar, sticking in the film world, Avatar, that's overcoming a monster. So if that is the type of story that you're looking at, then you're going to have your protagonist, you're going to have your antagonist, you're going to have like the force that threatens, there's going to be a threat to the homeland, possibly. So you can see like right there, there's different scenarios that are already popping up because of picking that particular story that are going to be scenes you're going to want to have in your story. All right, up next, Rags to Riches. Some of these you can just tell based on the title. Oh, I recognize that one, right? That's going to be someone who goes from not having anything to having, riches or whatever. So yeah, it's the poor protagonist acquires power, wealth, a mate, or maybe all of those, and loses all or most of those things and gains it back, growing as a person as a result. I think Disney kind of has cornered the market on a lot of these stories. You've got it's the Cinderella story. It's the story of Aladdin. It's acquiring the wealth or the riches along the way usually goes to their head, and they just obsess over maybe the wealth or the power that comes with it. But then they learn their lesson of, no, I still am who I started off as, and I realize the error of my ways, and now I have to make good. So even just describing that narrative right there, you can see there's several scenes that need to happen. So it's giving you that structure because you've chosen that particular story type. Number 3, this is the quest. The protagonist, the hero of the story, and companions, maybe not, but usually have companions, set out to acquire an important object or to get to a specific location. They face temptations and other obstacles along the way. I tend to go with this as the Indiana Jones story. He's always on each Indiana Jones movie or some of the tie-in novels, he's always on a quest to find X, and there's a pattern to that. You could also say the Lord of the Rings movies or the Lord of the Rings, books originally are the same way. They're out on a quest. And since you have companions, that also gives your protagonist a chance to interact with different companions with different personality types as well. Up next, number 4, we've got Voyage and Return. This is sometimes combined with Quest, and actually that's a good time to say any of these can be combined with any of the other ones. If you enjoy this element of the Rags to Riches story, but you want it to be part of a quest, but you also want it to be whatever else, these are all interchangeable. These are more just general archetypes that Christopher mentions and goes over in detail in his book. The Voyage and Return, the protagonist goes to a strange land, and after overcoming threats that land imposes, learns an important lesson unique to that specific location and that particular voyage that they are on, and they return home with those experiences accumulated in their brains. They've felt them emotionally, and they are a changed person, and that can inform how they live when they return to their homeland. I think the very famous example, also because I've read a lot of different versions of this, would be an Alice in Wonderland story. The Wizard of Oz story is also kind of the same thing. Movie-wise, The Matrix. The Matrix is a good example of this. There's also a quest involved there, but it's a voyage and return. Can you ever go back once you've experienced the Matrix? That sort of thing. So the next 2 Christopher Booker has separated out in the book, but I kind of think of them as 2 sides of the same coin. We've got comedy and we've got tragedy. Now, comedy, I'm an old school theater nerd too. So if you're on the stage, it's comedy and tragedy. That's the Shakespearean kind of either or that you get with a lot of stage writing or stage acting. So comedy, while it can mean haha funny, the actual definition that we're working with here is that it's a light and humorous character with a happy or cheerful ending. Versus if you have tragedy, we're looking at a protagonist that's the hero with a major character flaw or makes a great mistake, which is ultimately their undoing. And guess what? It ends tragically. So comedy and tragedy can be kind of not really interchangeable, but like I said, I feel like they're two sides of the same coin. Like it's a similar structure to the way the story's going to go, but one has a more lighthearted, humorous element, and one has a bit more of a dramatic and then tragic element by the end. So if you're looking at comedy, that one would be more like, I'm stuck in Disney now, like Frozen. If you're a musical fan, like Mamma Mia, the stage version and the film versions are kind of good examples of that, because there's lots of like misunderstandings and mishaps, but everything's kind of made clear and everything's basically lighthearted and fun by the end of it. Tragedy, well, let's just go back, like I mentioned Shakespeare a minute ago. You've got the Romeo and Juliets, you've got the Julius Caesar. In the movie world, if you watch like a lot of gangster films, those could be kind of rags to riches stories. Because it's usually somebody who acquires power, but usually the gangster movies end in tragedy. Either the main character is killed or they have to, kill their brother or father or something, or their spouse or something like that. So those usually end up in tragedy. Rebirth is the final one here. So an event forces the main character to change their ways and often become a better individual in the process. This is used in a lot of fairy tales. I would say, like A Christmas Carol. Everybody knows the story of A Christmas Carol. Ebenezer Scrooge. The events force the main character to change his ways. Those are being visited by the three spirits over, Christmas Eve night into Christmas Day, and then he becomes a better individual on Christmas Day because of the experiences he had over that period of time on, Christmas Eve. So that's a rebirth story. That can be compelling because you can start off with a character who's kind of an anti-hero or like the audience maybe doesn't like, and by the end of it, you've got like, oh, okay, that character's grown on me. I do like that person because as an audience, we've gone down that path of change with the main character. So then, speaking of characters, that is the next set of writing prompts that we have in this particular video is characters. You want to have well-rounded characters that draw people in, that are relatable, that are intriguing, or could just be pure evil. I mean, you can have an antagonist, the bad character as your lead character, and people may be interested in that character because it's so unlike yourself. The proliferation of like true crime podcasts and true crime TV shows and documentaries, those all have, kind of pure evil at their core as like the main character. And that's intriguing to people because it's something so outside of the norm that we experience on a day-to-day basis that it really does draw you in. Like throughout the entire Star Wars universe, like a lot of the bad characters in there are really intriguing characters, and some of them are even getting their own series and spin-offs at this point or standalone movies. So don't think that it all has to be entirely relatable as like, oh, that's a good person, that's a good protagonist. It could just be somebody who's like a great evil villain. That could be your central protagonist as well. So the character focus you want to have going through these writing prompts is pick one of those characters. It could be your protagonist, but you could use the same approach to your antagonist, your secondary characters, your other minor characters, your protagonist's best friend who's with them the whole way. So these character exercises are, in this particular sense, I wrote them as more of a protagonist character development exercise, but you can use it for any of the characters you've got going on in your story. So let's hop into prompt number 1. This is more inspirational than it is relating to your story. So pick a favorite character you have. Character, because we're talking about screenwriting here, you can pick something from movies or television or your favorite YouTube channel, but you want it to be fictional. You want a favorite character, a favorite fictional character, and give it a couple minutes. Think about like, what is your favorite thing about that character? What made the character feel real to you, or what makes that character feel real to you? What makes the character connect with you to the point where they are your favorite? So it's kind of more just like brainstorming. You could, draw a little, like one thing here, then draw a connecting circle over here and figure out the different traits and things like that. So you just want to explore what really connects with you about that character, because what you want to do then is take everything we learned from this writing prompt and apply it to your character in the next writing prompt. So switching gears from one of your favorite characters, we want to get to know one of your characters now. One good way I like to do this would be either like personality quizzes that you can find online. That'll kind of help you dig into your character, but you need to know a little bit about your character first. So I think a great starting spot is like set a timer and just start writing down like some of the physical characteristics that you have for the character you're working on. Height, weight, ethnicity, hair color, all the usual like physical descriptions you would need to like visualize that character in your head. But then also dive in on like, This is where personality quizzes or questionnaires come in handy. What are their hobbies? What are their favorite foods? What's their favorite, memory from their childhood if they're an adult? What are their aspirations when they become an adult if it's a child character? That sort of thing. So then once you've got a little bit of an idea about this character, meaning the basics, like we said, like a physical description, maybe a little bit about their past, you want to write, in regards to the story you want to tell, a one-sentence description of the character you're working with. Just one sentence. Like set a timer for like a minute and do one sentence that is about a description of your character. So then the next step, step 2, which is actually our third prompt, is to just expand that. And what I usually do here is I'll start off with a minute and then I'll do that one sentence. And if you're done in a minute, in under a minute, that's fine. Just reset the timer. Then I'll do like, maybe a couple minutes. So for 2 minutes, I want to expand that to 2 to 3 sentences. Maybe I'll set a timer for 5 minutes, expand it out to 5 sentences. This is how you can slowly grow your character biography just by slowly expanding it. So you're not having to sit down on that blank piece of paper and be like, oh shoot, like I don't know everything about this character. Well, this allows you to just start small. You just start with that one sentence and then you expand out to 2 and then 5 and then 10. And then next thing you know, you've got a whole page that is describing your character. You probably even have some scenes that you can work into your story as well, all just because you're slowly expanding out that character. And I like timers because that way it doesn't feel like, there's an end point to it. If I'm going to do one sentence and I set myself 1 minute, I know it's not going to take me more than a minute. So, I do my sentence there or whatever. And then that way you can slowly add the timer to keep you really focused and just slowly expand out that biography. So now that we've expanded it out, maybe you've got, 5, maybe 10, maybe 15 sentences of this character, you're starting to feel a little bit more like, okay, I got a good handle on like what kind of character I'm working with here. One thing I like to do is keep it contemporary. At the time period in which your story is set, go through a full day in the life of that character. And I mean from like waking up, are they alone? Are they with someone? Are they in an apartment? Are they in a house? Are they sleeping on the beach? Are they waking up in a dumpster because they were like knocked unconscious the night before and that's where whatever your story is, have them wake up and just do a day in the life of that particular character. And it doesn't have to be full of action and intrigue because this doesn't have to be your story, but just like maybe pick like it's the day before your story takes place and it is just an average ordinary day. See what their routines are like, or are they a creature of routine or not? Everything from, like I said, waking up to like, do they go to school? Do they go to work? Do they hang out with their friends? Are they doing a specific activity? Are they on vacation? Just go through, like it's a journal. You're writing a journal entry for your character for a day in the life of that character. So hopefully that gives you enough of a guide to like, okay, I think I'm getting a handle on this character. They're hopefully intriguing. They're hopefully really interesting, that you really want to keep exploring these characters. One thing I want you to keep in mind though, as you're developing this character and as you start to develop your story and your narrative and your plot, is the idea of audience identification. You want to introduce your protagonist in your story as early as possible in your script, in your story, in your video. So you want to get them like right in front of the audience pretty quickly, if not like scene number 1. And you want to get the audience to be on their side because we as the audience are going to experience the story through that particular character. And there's a few ways we know how we know to do this, because psychologically speaking, audiences, as humans, we're going to identify with other human traits in very specific ways. So like I've got up here, sympathy is an option. Your main character could be like the victim of undeserved, misfortune. If the first scene is someone being ganged up and beat up on, we're probably going to sympathize with the person who's like, what's going on? Then they're getting beat up, not necessarily with the bullies. I guess it depends on your personality, but generally speaking, people are going to side with the character who is getting, undeserved misfortune. There's the idea of jeopardy. Put your character in danger in scene 1, and we're going to be hoping for the best for them. There's an admiration kind of quality to it, where if you have a character who in scene 1 is displaying, courage, intelligence, or luck, wouldn't we be on the character's side if in the first scene we're watching somebody like, man, I really need to get my car fixed, or I really need to get a down payment on an apartment so I can move out of my parents' house, and they're scratching off a lottery ticket and they win. They're receiving some luck there. They're receiving some good news. Like we're on their side, like yes, and then we get to celebrate with them because that's also an activity that we would want to experience ourselves. There's also the idea of power. Power is kind of more what we get now with like Marvel and Star Wars and superhero things, where there are characters with powers that we find intriguing. Be like, ooh, that would be really cool to fly or have laser vision or, you know, whatever, be able to shrink down real tiny like Ant-Man does. So that could be another way to get an audience identification going with your main character. And like I said, you want to start that off pretty much immediately with the audience. You know, the first time your protagonist is being introduced. So keep that in mind as you're going to start developing, like, what would be that first scene I'm going to write here for this particular story? Which is how we're going to wrap up this particular video with our final prompt, which is, what is the way you will introduce your character to your audience? That may take a bit of like kind of speculation right now on some scenes that you think you're going to have. We're going to get a little bit more into that. We're going to get a lot more into that in the next video at our next session, the Teen Writers Group. So in session number 2, we are going to be specifically focusing on structure and emotion. So we're going to be structuring out the story because all the brainstorming and writing we've done so far has given us, hopefully, a few scenes that we want to know, that we know we want to include. And then also what we want to do is use that audience identification and have like a nice emotional arc that's going to run through the whole story from beginning to end. That's going to take your audience, it's going to compel your audience to stick with the story and feel that payoff by the time we get to the end there. So hopefully that got you some great ideas, got you some great brainstorming, and got you some intriguing character development. Join us either in person or in the next video that we'll have here shortly that will go through structure, emotion, and have all that stuff put together, and you'll have yourself a fantastic short screenplay. So keep writing and see you next time.